If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 235 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for what's sure to be a scandalous affair. No, I kid. We're here to talk Family Affair with none other than Kathy Garver. You love Kathy as Cissy, Rachel the slave girl in the Ten Commandments, and of course the voice of Firestar and Spider-Man and his amazing friends. So many stories await you, and that's coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, just a quick reminder, our last interview with Fritz Coleman and Wheezy Palanker, two LA broadcasting legends. Do not miss that. We dive deep into their podcast. And that time, they both testified in the Michael Jackson criminal trial. Great stuff. Don't miss it. You know what else you shouldn't miss? This conversation with Kathy Garver. We're diving deep into her memoir, Surviving Cissy, My Family Affair of Life in Hollywood. No stone will go unturned as we dive into the past with Kathy Garver. Enjoy. All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest, cultural icon, author, star of movies, stage, radio, voiceover, animation, audiobook, narration. You loved her as Rachel, the slave girl, Firestar, and of course, the best big sister in the world, forever loved as Cissy on Family Affair. Welcome to the show, Kathy Garver.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Very happy to be here.
Oh, so glad to have you here. I've been doing my podcast for years, so, you know, my family's kind of over it. But when I told my wife, who I was talking to, that she's like, I'm trying to like kind of capture the emotion where she like repeated back, Cissy? And like she almost fell over. Like she got so excited. You know,
Does she have a Mrs. Beasley doll?
You know, I don't know. Didn't everyone know?
A lot of people did. They're still making them.
That was one of the interesting things that I learned reading your book, how much stuff was made, how much cool merchandise was made for Family Affair.
My newest book, The Family Affair Scrapbook, I devote like a couple of chapters into all of the merchandise and everything, because in 1966, they were just getting into all the merchandising and it took off. So we had the lunch pails and paper dolls and the Viewmasters, if you remember. Well, you're too young, but they had Viewmasters that were very cool, and coloring books. And Disney, of course, discovered that, and they make more money off of their merchandising than they do off of the original product. Now, since they're not making any of our stuff anymore, but they're making more money off the DVDs and selling it to different platforms.
I know you're busy in general with acting and voiceover and all that, but it seems that you also have a full-time job just keeping all the memories and Family Affair top of mind and alive.
I'm kind of like the banner bearer for Family Affair, because unfortunately, Johnny Whitaker is still around, but he's kind of out of the business. So I'm the standard bearer for it, and I've written all the books about it primarily. And so it's something that I really like to do. And we have a pilot out for a sequel called Aunt Cissy. I'm proud to be producing that and starring in it. I think it's better. You know, they're doing so many reboots, but I believe sequels are better than reboots, because they did a reboot of Family Affair, maybe 15 years ago, and it just tanked. And it wasn't good. It wasn't the same Buffy. It wasn't the same Cissy. And they said, what is this? And Tim Curry as Mr. French? That's never going to fly. So when they have an original character and they can see how that character develops and have some flashbacks to the original show, those always seem to fare much, much better. in my opinion.
Kathy, I was just thinking about this and couldn't agree with you more. I hate when they're like, we're remaking, like with I'll just use the Family Affair one for an example. Couldn't you just come up with a new story about orphans? Does it have to be called Family Affair? Do you have such little confidence in your idea that you have to use an old name that you know people will immediately love and then at least give you a shot? What happened to just good old fashioned come up with a good idea and work hard to make it great?
Well, it comes with branding and knowing the name of it. And so many people know the name of Family Affair than they know of the orphans. So people are going to not immediately, but tune in because, I know that, or I remember that, or I've seen her Facebook and she's still on Facebook. Oh, this is going to be exciting. And then the kind of disappointment comes in. But they do that for that reason.
Right.
Rather have the real people tune in and say, hey, we're still here.
I was trying to find Aunt Cissy. I was trying to dig around and try and find it. If it exists online, I wanted to see it because that sounded amazing. Like you being the new, main character, maybe you bringing in people. Yeah, it's like the next generation, and it's like, then you don't have to exactly, you can kind of adapt it a bit. I get the whole marketing slant to it and it's just easier with the IP. But it's like, just come on. If you got Tim Curry and all these other cool people, you can call it something.
Yeah, put them into a different concept. Right. Well, we both agree in different ways now. That's good.
No, I think we're on the same page. We're on the same page. So I wanted to talk about, I'm from Michigan. So I wanted to talk about probably one of your hidden gems that maybe you don't talk about a lot. But when you and Sebastian co-hosted the JL Hudson Parade in Detroit.
Yes. Well, I actually like Michigan. You, a Michigander, we're looking at you. We're taking a gander at the Michigan. And it was fun. And it gets a little cold there, a little chilly. But I remember that parade, and I had on this great big coat that I had gotten in New York with my previous manager, who kind of stole most of my money, but that's another story. And it had a, great big kind of fur collar. And Sebastian and I were getting along great. And my manager at that time, I had come out with a record called Lem the Orphan Reindeer, my first and last record. And it was written by Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, if you remember that. They were
the Monkees.
Great. Yeah, the Monkees, The Last Train to Clarksville. And they had just a whole repertoire of fabulous, fabulous songs. And they wrote this special little ditty. He was manager of them as well, for Lem the Orphan Reindeer. And so my manager said, okay, while you're on television, say that you're coming out with Lem the Orphan Reindeer, and it's, people can listen to it. So being a good girl, following what I'm supposed to be doing at that time, I was just 20. I said, okay. Well, I said that, well, I got the chilliest look I have ever seen from Mr. French, AKA Sebastian. He was just astounded that I would advertise something like that. Now, of course, everybody says what they're doing next and what's going on. But at that time, that was more of a rarity.
I hope you didn't think I didn't know about Lem the Orphan Reindeer.
Yes, you may know, Jeff, but perhaps there might be one or two listeners that didn't know about it.
I will be putting a link to the YouTube of you. It's the spoken word classic. May I call it that?
Yes, you may.
I will put a link to that in the show notes when this goes live, so everyone can enjoy it. And so,
do you want to know why it's called the spoken word classic? That you just made up right now. That was why you made me laugh so much.
I know why, but go ahead.
Well,
I'd rather hear it from you.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yes.
Your listeners. Well, okay. So my manager is managing Tommy and Bobby, and they wrote this song. And we went to the recording studio to record the song. Oh boy. And I was ready. Now, I had sung all my life. I was a little Megalyn kitty starting when I was 3 years old. And this was when Ethel Megalyn, she owned the studio, and they discovered Shirley Temple. Of course, every mother thought their daughter was going to be Shirley Temple, as did mine. But I learned to sing and I learned to dance, and I had done lots of singing performances. So we get into the recording studio, and the music begins. In the very midst of nowhere, Santa hollers, whoa, he spied a tiny reindeer struggling in this. And they said, wait. I said, what? He says, you're off key. What do you mean I am off key? I am not off key. I've been singing all my life. I says, well, you've been singing all your life off key then. So long story short, they decided that perhaps I could make this a spoken word classic. Actually, I call it one of the first rap songs. So I spoke in the very midst of nowhere. Santa hollered, whoa. And in the back, I have a whole chorus of children singing on key and the right tune. So that's a story of the making of Lem. And we had a little stuffed deer to go with it.
An adorable 45. And then it ends with, Kathy, what's an orphan?
I'm surrounded. Yes, I had a lot of orphans in my life.
So I know the audition for Family Affair came when you were at UCLA, but what I found extremely fascinating, interesting, that I did not know, by the time you auditioned at UCLA, and you just mentioned the Meglin Studios, but you had already had like 2 decades worth of roles, it's 60 TV shows at this point, 40 commercials. So how did people treat you at college at UCLA? Because this is pre-Family Affair, but you're already, right? You're already kind of an active actor, and I'm sure everyone's seen you. Like, what was it like just being on campus? I mean, did you get treated differently? Were you just, were you trying to just fit in? Were you just trying to be a normal teenager at college?
Well, 2 things. My parents, and especially my mom, says, okay, when I was a child, when, you're out doing the 10 Commandments or Miss Brooks or whatever, you're doing, just don't tell everybody what you're doing. Just say, well, I was out. So that inculcated in me this necessity for normalcy. So I had to be like everybody else, and I'm quite normal. Your listeners did not see me with my little tick. No, that was just comedy. So I had that to go with. But once I got to UCLA, and I went to a shrink, and I said, here's the thing. I'm in the sorority. I'm a cheerleader. I am taking these classes. I'm trying to get A's, and I actually did very well in college. I said, but I have this whole other life. It's like that old show, I Led 3 Lives. And I says, now, is this making me totally a triple schizophrenic, or that would be 6 personalities? What am I supposed to do with all of this? He says they are not so different from one another, because I was going on interviews while I was living at the sorority and doing the Rifleman and other shows that were on in the 60s, and still keeping up my career and still studying and leading an active dating life and a fun life. But I guess it's all right, because I took it from each one of those things, and I've continued that all the way up to as old as I am now. I have a lot of things that I think it's just my personality. I'd like to be busy a lot. And I'm a Sagittarian, so we have to do this and that, the other thing. And I'm a woman that we can multitask. And I'm sure you can multitask, Jeff, but that isn't what the generalization that they make for men and women. There you have it. I'm a multitasker.
I love how you casually just go, and I was in the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Yeah. Little movies like that.
That was actually your second movie, Night of the Hunter, being kind of your big debut, right? At 7, and then at 8, you're alongside Charlton Heston.
And in Night of the Hunter, I was alongside Robert Mitchum and Shelley Winters and Lillian Gish and Peter Graves. I mean, it was just a fantastic cast. And that was Charles Lawton first and unfortunately last directorial duty. That was really quite an entree into the entertainment world. But then to go to that, and Cecil B. DeMille and Charlton Heston and Deborah Paget and Yul Brynner. Yeah, so I got started with some, I guess, heavy hitters.
Tell me about Rachel the Slave Girl. For those who don't know, Rachel the Slave Girl was the girl that gave Moses the idea to free the Jews. No, I'm just kidding. It's a big role. It's a really big role.
Sometimes, she's just a footnote in history, in the Bible, but that was actually Cecil B. DeMille's creation. I was just hired to be an extra with Hazel McMillan. She was my agent. And so I was on the set and wearing all my makeup, dark makeup and robes and all of that. And it was during the Exodus part of the movie. And we're all getting out of town, going out of Dodge. And I'm on this rickety wagon and I'm sitting up on the wagon and I hear this big voice cry out, "Don't let that little girl's face get in the camera." I said, "Is he talking to me? Is that God?" Well, it wasn't God. It was just that he was very high up. And it was Cecil B. DeMille on a big crane getting a big overshot. So I said, "Oh, I guess that was me." This fellow came over and kind of hid me behind a blanket. We did the scene. And then he descended, Cecil B. DeMille, the theatrical deity, down to earth where we were. And I got off my wagon down to earth. And we chatted. And then the assistant director told my mom, well, I think your daughter's going to be on this movie a lot longer. And he actually wrote Rachel into the movie. But he was very want to do that because he realized that these big epics and these big spectacular things, and they don't get that today. With all the special effects, you're watching the special effects and, excuse me, where's the story? Where's the emotion? So he would actually pick someone out and give them and allow the audience to feel a little bit more and to relate to actually what was going on in the feelings of the people there. That was a long story. How long do we have, Tim? Now we've got a lot of decades to cover.
We got a lot. Sorry to interrupt, but we have to take a quick break. I want to thank everyone for their support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my epic conversation with Kathy Garver. She's about to share another story with Moses. And we're back. You remained connected with Charlton Heston till he passed?
Yes. He was a really marvelous person. I was dating this fellow, Michael Dante, and they were big tennis players and partners. We'd actually go to tennis tournaments, but we went up to his house in Mulholland and they would play tennis and I'd sit, on the veranda and his wife would bring out lemonade. And I remember that I have this wonderful picture of Charlton Heston and me on the paper mache mountain. And he's asking, are you afraid? And I said, no, but Rachel is. And she was my doll. So I sent him like 10 pictures. And I said, would you mind signing these? And he had Alzheimer's at the time, but he signed all those pictures, sent them out, happy to. And of course, being a hoarder, I still have the letter that he sent.
That's amazing. And you're not a hoarder. I would have saved all of that. I would have saved everything. You got to.
I just did an exhibit. It was the 50th anniversary of Family Affair. And I think that's odd since I'm 39. But there it was. And they have this Valley Relics Museum in San Fernando Valley. It's a really great museum. I did this whole big exhibit. And I just went to my garage. I said, memorabilia. And I picked out all these things to help make the exhibit. And my office is kind of like a museum. And I put stuff up on the wall. That's why it's so messy. But that's it. They're genius. See, that's why your office is messy too.
I have everything around me that I love and things like that and framed things. Oh, so I did have a question. This is Alice. Just one quick question on this one. Have you ever gone back to blue popsicles? I know it was a traumatic thing for you back then, and
I still I cannot. No, I cannot eat a blue raspberry popsicle. Are you kidding? I would be struck by lightning. Should we tell the backstory?
Yeah.
Or people can just get my book and read it.
Well, right. We want to tease a little bit, and then they'll go get your book, Surviving Cissy, My Family Affair of Life in Hollywood, which is a great book.
And they can read about the blue raspberry popsicle.
Yeah, and even more on the 10 Commandments. There's plenty. We'll tell just enough to also get them interested and running out to get the book. Hopefully they haven't run out right now and they're still listening. Listen to the end, everyone, and then you'll be ready. All right. So when you're at UCLA and you've got now all this behind you, in your head, were you thinking, all right, I'm gonna settle in, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna be at college, I'm gonna do the college thing. But then along comes your agent calls and we have Family Affair. We want you to audition for Family Affair. Because I know like one of the things that you mentioned was it came with a commitment of 32 episodes, which means it would have been a long thing. It wasn't like a pilot and you'd come back. So did you have to did you think about that? Was that a part of the thought process or no, I'm an actor, I act?
Well, I was just excited to get a job. I'm always happy when I get a job. It's the height of anxiety and on the stress thing to lose a job, to get a job. Well, actors do that every day and you wonder why they're stressed. But I'm always happy to get a job. And when Hazel, I went on the audition and I didn't know what was going to come after that. But they've already sold this television series and they need someone, they have the whole cast, they just need the teenage daughter. They had someone cast and that didn't work out. So I said, oh, okay. And at the same time, I went on an interview for a little religious thing called This Is the Life. as I said, I was going on auditions while I was in school. And so this was just another audition. And my agent calls the next day. She says, oh, you got this. You got the series. And I says, oh, well, good. And you got the other job. And I said, wow, this is definitely a day for celebration. But I didn't know what it would entail. And I was able to finish out my third year, and we started in the summer to shoot. And I says, well, I obviously am not going to be able to continue for my last year at college, which was fine because, I mean, as soon as this show came out, well, I didn't know. I was in a store called Bullock's, which is in Hudson's, Bullock's, Robinson's. I like all these department stores. I was on the escalator, and this one says, oh, I saw you last night. That was a great show. Someone recognized me? What is this? They want my autograph? Why do they want my autograph? So that was kind of an awakening to being on television and being on a series. And then there it goes for 5 years. I did go back and I finished my school and I got my bachelor's in speech. That's why I talk a lot, I think, and psychology. My psychology would tell me to shut up, Kathy. And then I went back and got a master's in theater arts.
That's awesome that you went back and kind of finished. And that was after you went to the I want to say the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. Did I get that right?
That was very good. Yes, that's exactly right.
For Family Affair. So what the audition process? I know you mentioned there was another Cissy cast that you mentioned. I read in your book. You read these things now and you just get flabbergasted. She gained a little weight, and so they said, maybe she's not right. It's like, oh man, everything was treated a lot differently back then, and maybe not. Oh, anyway. So was that what opened the door then for you? They started having doubts on this other Cissy, and so now you're there. Can you tell me a little bit about just the audition process for the role?
Well, I had my same agent that I had had ever since the Ten Commandments, and she knew me well. I was at the sorority house, and I get a call from my mom, and she says, oh, you have an audition this afternoon. And I says, oh, okay, that's great. I don't have any classes. And she says, I'll come and pick you up. It's way on the other side of town. It's in Hollywood. And I said, oh, okay, great. I said, the only thing is they want a blonde. And I said, oh, well, at that time I had hair like yours. I had very dark hair. I had dark eyes. That's what allowed me to be a slave girl, Rachel. And I played Indians when I was young. And so I said, oh, wow, what are we going to do? She says, I have an idea. I love my mother. My mother was very smart, very creative. She was also a nurse, an RN. Anyway, she says, I'll take care of it. So she goes to the drugstore, and I said, I don't know what she's going to do. And I go to this blonde that I know in the sorority house, Tootie Spanenberg. She was married to Gregory Peck's son. Anyway, she was blonde. And I said, Tootie, do you have any like blonde makeup, like lighter eyebrows or whatever? And she said, oh, here. She gave me her whole palette. So there I put on all my blonde makeup. My mother comes with this can of streaks and tips, she calls it. So she sprays my brown hair all over. I look like, I don't know what I looked like, something out of Goldfinger. It was like a helmet. Push it and, very solid. So I talk to the creator, producer, writer of Family Affair, wonderful guy. Ed Hartman, he was the president of the Writers Guild, and he was wonderful. So I'm sitting and I'm thinking we're having a very nice chat. And then he says, and he looks at me and he says, what is the matter with your hair? And I said, my hair? And he said, yes. He says, it's turning green. I says, green? Oh, must be the light. And chatted and laughed. It was okay. It broke a lot of ice. And he said, okay, thank you. This is very nice meeting you. So I said, oh, well, that was it. Mom tried. And that's when my agent called the next day and said, you've got a job. But they said, you have to go to Max Factor and see if you can get a blonde wig. And I said, okay. Max Factor is still there. It's now the Hollywood Museum. And they still have the room. So I go in, I get this long blonde wig, blue and white check dress at Western Costumers. I look like Alice in Wonderland. I come and do the pilot episode. And they said, okay, that's fine. And then she calls again. She says, okay, you've got it with one caveat. Never wear that blue dress or that long blonde wig again. I said, okay, it's agreed. That was the audition process.
Oh, man, that's awesome. How long did it take for all of you to kind of click as a family? Like, I mean, just emotionally off stage, like where did you guys all just immediately get along? Was it, I know, because you were like in between, right? You were like older than the kids, younger than the adults. Because part of the magic of that show was just kind of the synergy and the chemistry between all of the characters. So was that something you guys just, that electricity you just felt right away?
Yes. We instantly liked each other, I think, right away. Johnny Whitaker and I were born on the same day, December the 13th, different years, of course. And so we had that same kind of personality. And Anissa was in April. Not that I'm, a sun sign total person, but I think what was the immediate kind of relationship is we all had strong families. And Brian absolutely adored children. And so he's never met a child. He never had met a child or a teenager that he just didn't think was fabulous and adored. And Sebastian, with all his pompousness and everything, loved his family, loved his wife, had 3 kids. And Johnny came from a Mormon family, had 7 brothers and sisters. And Anissa, her mother adored her, and she had 1 brother, but she always wanted to be a part of a family like that. I think that, and we all really kind of loved it. We loved each other. It was just a nice synergy, as you say, and it was a lot of nice warmth and electricity passing back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the show a lot growing up. I rewatched a bunch of episodes just to kind of, everyone can watch them. They're on Tubi and other things. You can stream all the episodes. I don't know why I'd forgotten it. Maybe as a kid, the whole orphan thing didn't really connect. I remember like 3 kids living with their uncle. Sometimes as a kid, you don't pick it up. But the first 2 episodes they're pretty deep in terms of the family dynamics and feeling real. And Buffy kind of breaks into Uncle Bill's heart, a bit. And then you and Jody show up at the end, and then he kind of brings you all in. Then he has doubts even about Cissy, right? He was thinking maybe I can't, And so like that whole kind of creation of the family from the tragedy that the 3 of the kids had in the show, it was like, oh wow, this is deep. I know it's silly to say, like, because I know that's what the show is, but as a kid, when I was watching it, I think maybe that I just, sometimes the deeper things when you're younger, you kind of get, it probably sounds silly. So.
And plus, we didn't really talk about it. It was something, and especially in the first episodes, it was a dramedy, but there was always, I think, this layer of triste, this kind of sadness that permeated through it, and this need to be connected. And even though nothing was said, I think that the children felt so gratified, and the little ones, not so much, but knowing that there was someone to care for them and that they were all together. And that they would stay all together as long as they could. Anytime anybody wanted to leave, like I wanted to go to the Peace Corps, I wanted to get married and be, Cissy, don't go. And I gave in, I stayed with my family, silly girl. But there it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, the dynamic, I mean, he was your uncle, but he was definitely a strong father figure. And I know he was kind of a macho guy in the movies, but like such a tender heart on the show. I rewatched Waltz from Vienna. Just him treating you like his own daughter. Just here's a 17-year-old that wants to run off, is in love with love, and wants to kind of run off. It was touching. It was just like, sometimes when you watch older shows, they feel a bit dated and all that kind of stuff. But I was watching, and I was like, these are great. I mean, this is just solid. I mean, like, it was filmed great. The scripts were great. You guys were all great. I mean, it's just like, when something's done great, it holds up. And so I do encourage everyone to go rewatch. I love, that's why one of the things I love about this podcast is kind of rediscovering and kind of diving into things. And
it's like classic conversations. And I think like this particular television series and like a couple others are really classic, and they will continue to be. And one thing, they were shot on film, which makes them very warm to me. And you'll see that in the book, how I kind of say, well, why was this so successful? Why can people still watch it? And I had mentioned Ed Hartman at the beginning, who was the head of the Writers Guild, but they had all come from movies. And they, he was with Laurel and Hardy and Bob Hope and all those things. And we had Charlie Barton for our director that also did those movies. So they are coming from that real classic movie, beautifully produced and lit the sound, the lighting, the set design. And again, we followed like a classic storyline. And Ed Hartman has said, what made this good? And he says, well, writing, if you want the story, you start out like you're at the bottom of a palm tree and, there's things around, you climb up on the palm tree, you're at the top of the palm tree, you see everything that can be seen, and you say, oh, okay, and you slide down. So it's like you start out with a problem, you climb up, you reach the pinnacle, the climax and the denouement, the ending. And we had a little, not a moral at the end of the story, but underneath there was, oh, I see. If you have a problem like that, that's really a good way to solve it. Talk to those people, love those people, give those people a little understanding.
Absolutely. I rewatched A Member of the Family too, because in the book you mentioned that's one of your favorite episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things like, it felt so real. Like if you think of like of the classic misunderstandings on Three's Company, right? Well, there's misunderstandings in this episode, but in a real human way that a real family would have to deal with. The subtleties of a misunderstanding and the feelings that can transpire because of that. And Sebastian Cabot's role in this, like, it was just like the undercurrent of like him and his whole servant community or whatever, like what they would have at the park when he would meet. And I was like, I'm a member of the family,
Yes, right.
It was so touching, it's like, it was just subtle things like, hey, Jodie and Buffy, I'm going to make your caricatures. And then Mr. French gets all upset and Brian is like, well, you know why he's upset, right? And it was like, it's just the subtleties of different communication. Every one of the episodes is kind of like that. And it was just like, that's why it was like, it's so enjoyable to kind of just keep binging in. Okay, so.
Well, and I want to say, that Brian set that tone a lot too, because he was such a realistic actor. And also the writing of it was taken from real life. And I was just looking up on my hoarded wall up here because I have caricatures of the family. And I actually did the caricatures in that episode. And just today, I was talking to this fellow, Tom Richardson, and he was with Mad Magazine. And there was a Mad Magazine that did like a parody of Family Affair. Well, he's just made a new sketch of the Family Affair group. And some people on my Facebook says, oh, you've got to go see this. So I just texted him today. And so he's sending me this new sketch. The Family Affair never dies. It just becomes a caricature or an Aunt Cissy.
Wait, so you actually drew those?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, why aren't you selling those on your website and stuff like that? Those are great. I mean, like.
That's a good idea.
I know. I will waive my normal 10%.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, and I did read about you're an entrepreneur and all about social platforms. So yes, that's very entrepreneurial of you, Jeff.
Oh.
I'll give you 10% for that.
No. It's my pleasure. Sorry to interrupt, but we have to take a quick break. And we're back with more Family Affair and Kathy Garver. One of the things that was really interesting was it was not normal for a movie star to do TV, right? It wasn't probably normal. Now it's normal. Like every movie star now wants to be on a Netflix show or whatever, right?
They'll even do commercials.
What's in your wallet? But back then it wasn't, it was either like really TV or you were in the movies. And here's a movie star. He's really big. So it was like, so they actually, this was fascinating. I was reading it, like the whole 3-month shooting schedule to work around him. Did that drive you crazy? Like, did you even know what scripts? Because I know you were doing multiple shows at the same time. And
it was difficult. I mean, I don't think it was hard for the kids because you say, well, this is just what you say and you say it and go to your line. And they just wanted him to be natural. I don't think they really knew what the stories were about. But for your listeners that aren't quite familiar with this and haven't read the book yet, my Surviving Cissy book, as you say, movie stars did not want to do television. So Don Feddersen, who was our executive producer, and he had done My Three Sons along with Ed Hartman, and they wanted a movie star. And Fred McMurray had just appeared in Shaggy Dog, and he said, oh, he'll be perfect. So they went to Fred, and they said, look, if you do this, you only have to work 3 months, and then the rest of the time you can go do your movies. But the thing that got them was you get a financial piece of the profits. Well, now that was the proverbial offer that Fred couldn't refuse. And then when they approached Brian, well, Glenn Ford turned him down on that, even though. But Brian had just finished the Parent Trap, and they saw what a great sense of comedy that he had and his whole kind of mien. And so they said, how about that? 3 months, get a piece of it. Brian says, I'm on. But how about for us, the workhorses that have to, be doing that? We would have like scenes from 3 different shows all in the same day, that all the scenes that Brian was in, which meant that all the scripts had to be done at the beginning of the season. And then we had changes, and drove the wardrobe people and the hair people crazy too. Now, I'm wearing this necklace, and your listeners can't see, but it's of a horse that my good friend Barry Barsamian gave me for Christmas, blah, blah, blah. I wore this pendant in one of the episodes, and I was supposed to be a hippie. Now, I was still, when the show finished, I would go back to UCLA, and then that switched from the semester to the quarter system. So I could scoot in a quarter. So I was supposed to go to this hippie party at UCLA, and I borrowed my outfit from Family Affair. And I forgot to bring back my pendant. And they were shooting this scene the next day. So poor Thelma Strom, she went all over and tried to get one just like it. Well, she couldn't, except she found one that was pretty close. And so I wore that pendant. That pendant now I gave to my friend Paul Lisnek, who is in Chicago and has a wing of the museum in Chicago. Anyway, and it's displayed there. Now I forgot what we were talking about.
We were talking the craziness of that, and then you were talking about continuity.
Yeah, it was hard, but that's the way it is, and that was fine. It was fun.
I was talking with John Provost, Timmy from Lassie, and he said the reason Timmy wore the same outfit was because they shot so many different things that then they never had to worry about the continuity.
And that's why Brian wore a bathrobe, all I think of the 3rd and 4th seasons. I don't want to change. But just give me a bathrobe.
Oh, man. Tell me a little bit about your castmates. So tell me a little bit about Brian Keith, just kind of like maybe a quick memory, or did he become like a real uncle? That kind of thing. I remember that when Robert Kennedy was shot, and I was so upset. I mean, anybody to be assassinated like that. And we were on the set, and he was just so comforting. And he says, because I started crying. And I says, I can't believe that happened. Why would someone shoot someone? Why would someone kill someone like that? And so he was just very comforting and very dear. And he cared for people, and he cared for their emotions. And that was, you wouldn't have maybe thought that when you saw Brian's earlier part of his career with all the macho men, but he really had a very tender heart. And Sebastian Cabot, Mr. French.
Mr. French was very, very, very professional. He wanted every single word exactly as it was written. And he would study those lines and get them exactly right. And he was the antithesis of that character at home. Because I went to his house, a couple times, gone over for dinner, and he's in I don't know if they had sweatpants back then, but like that, and cooked dinner for us and was just laid back and loving with his family. And so he was totally different from that character.
And then Anissa and Johnny.
And Johnny, as I say, came from 7 brothers and sisters. And he was a talented little boy. Then he went on to do Tom Sawyer. And then he just got onto drugs and alcohol, unfortunately. And his family did an intercession, and he got off them. And so he's now off and into helping other people get off drugs. And Anissa was such a smart and beautiful little girl with such a golden spirit. And she was generous and dear and sad. And you have to understand about Anissa, because she was 9 when, just turned 9, and Johnny was just 6. But she was very small. She was tiny. And they still had her 5 years later, when she was 5 and 9, is almost 14 years old, as a teenager, wearing little dresses and carrying around Mrs. Beasley. So it was hard for her to find her own identity. And she didn't want to have anything more to do with show business, unfortunately, because she could have done a lot of things. But unfortunately, she got on drugs, and then that was 18. She died, unfortunately.
So sad.
Yeah.
What about Nancy Walker?
Nancy was very interesting because she came from vaudeville, and the producers thought, oh, well, we need to put something in. This is our 5th season. Let's do something different. So they got Nancy in to help Mr. French, and they would clash because she was totally against his type. But being from vaudeville, she wanted everything really, really quick. And we were not the quickest show in the world. We would have long close-ups and different things. And then she's waiting for the punchline, waiting to put it in. But she was very nice. I liked her.
Yeah, she seemed like she'd be hilarious. And then, of course, wrap it up with drama queen Steen Steeler.
Easy for you to say.
I know, right? Mrs. Beasley.
Yes, Mrs. Beasley. You should see my therapy, the little television thing on YouTube. Did you see that?
Yes, I did actually. I did. Wait, where I wrote it down. I had a little thing where you were Cissy again.
Yeah, TV therapy.
Yeah, TV therapy. Yeah, that was a great idea that guy had.
Yeah, Terry Ray. He's a wonderful writer. So he was grown-up Cissy, and it's a show. And so he has me in he's not a psychologist, a therapist, but he's playing a therapist. I'm not a real doctor, but I play one. But anyway, he was playing a psychiatrist, and I'm here. And so he says, oh, and he says, how are you doing? I says, well, I'm doing fine. I keep hearing this thing in my head. Da, 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 da. Oh, you keep hearing that in your head? Yes, this little tune keeps going. And he says, what's your last memory? I says, well, my last memory, I think, was in 1966. I remember my back was always to something. And I said, well, now look, I said, I can put up with a freckle-faced little kid and one that doesn't have any teeth. But I'll be darned if I'm going to put up with a polka dot dress doll with glasses and curly blonde hair.
Right.
And that was Mrs. Beasley.
Yes, that was.
They were making fun of it.
That was really funny because you kept talking about like camera angles, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, and then you're like, I admitted dropping her Mrs. Beasley on the head, and then you're, oh, she's a doll. Well, you could have started with that, yeah.
Right. I was a hologram.
So I watched you on To Tell the Truth as well, where you. It's funny when I do because I knew it wasn't you, right? It was was one of Dolly Parton's siblings, but I guessed wrong. I got to tell you. And I go in with the guy because the woman who was the sister, she changed her voice during the show. And then when they revealed it and she started talking, I'm like, well, she has the same voice as Dolly Parton. How much did they tell?
I didn't notice that, but she was telling the truth. And the fellow, he was very good, but they wanted me not to have a Southern accent because I had moved away from the little place that we had up in the mountains, that little shack. And I'd gone to Los Angeles and I had improved my speech. And so that was how I was different. But I think it would have been, I would have gotten another, but I only got one vote. There were only 3 people, but I would have gotten a couple more votes because I looked like Dolly. I mean, I don't particularly have her great trait, but it's not bad. But I like her height and everything. So.
Yeah, I love that show.
It's fun. Now, there's a reboot that worked.
Yes.
I did To Tell the Truth back in 1960s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yes, that was the original show in the 60s.
I did learn about the Locks box from you in your book with the Hollywood Squares. That was interesting. We'll put the pretty girl down at the bottom, which I basically is right field, I guess, for baseball, but on the Hollywood Squares where nothing's really going to happen. And then you proved yourself, and then got different squares where they wrote you jokes. That was really interesting. I love that you got Brian Keith's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame after he passed away. There's so much. I know I know we got some new stuff to talk about, but you're also like this amazing voiceover artist. You've done over 80 audio books. You've done just a million cool stuff. From my geeky point of view, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Firestar. I'll put that one at the top of my own personal list just because I think that's so cool that you're a Marvel character. When you're at a Comic-Con and stuff like that, if it's not Family Affair, what 8x10 do people choose to have you sign?
Well, I've always been interested because I go to the Comic-Cons and I bring all my Firestar stuff. And I have a great picture that was taken from a cell. And now I have like little action figures that they have made of Firestar. 2 years ago, they came out with a 12-inch Firestar. And then there was a great big statue. And now this year, there's the triumvirate and the Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar all together. And then they brought out another little Firestar. So it's amazing. Now, that was done in the 80s. It's amazing to me, the endurance. I'm so proud that I've done like classic things like Ten Commandments and Family Affair and Spider-Man. But I will have all those things out. And then I will also have a picture of Night of the Hunter. I have pictures of the Ten Commandments, and then I have an array of family affairs. And even at the Comic-Cons, it depends on what the person's particular bent is. And then sometimes they'll take a family affair and a Spider-Man, but I have like 4 or 5 different kinds of Spider-Man pictures. And so even if I'm at a Comic-Con, they will take family affair pictures. Now, I just did the Hollywood show, and I thought, well, this has been primarily classics art. Well, I sold half of the Firestar stuff and the Spider-Man things, and the other half was primarily family affair. Now, that surprised me a little bit.
I wonder if Disney Plus helped with the Firestar stuff, because now that's all on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends is now all on Disney Plus. So it's much more accessible.
Ah, yes. And they are much more into making merchandise, as we have mentioned before. Merchandise is just coming out. And so they know that having all of these, the little figures and the action figures. Yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Entrepreneur. I do.
I read about Firestar. I was like, it originally was supposed to be the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, but they couldn't get the rights. So they created a new character. Boom. That opened the door for Kathy Garver.
It did. And that was the first one that Stan Lee had written especially for TV. All the other characters had been taken from the comic books. So this was the first time that Firestar appeared in the television show first. And then she has like a 4 comic book series. And then they did the comic books for her.
That is awesome. You've done so many iconic things.
Well, yes. But you know, I taught speech up in San Francisco for a while, how to do audiobooks and animation characters and ADR and all of this. And what I would tell my students is, if you're going to stay in this business for a long time, you really should hone your skills in all the different kinds of aspects of it. And especially for voiceovers, how to do a commercial voice and an animated voice and different kind of characters and all of that, how to narrate an audiobook. Because when you finish a movie, there might not be another movie for a couple months. So you want to fill that in with voiceover or stage or whatever.
That's great advice. You can teach me how to do You can teach me how to do an audiobook after.
Okay.
I did want to mention Ma Mishpacha Shikazot, which was the Israeli play you did after Family Affair in Israel. I just wanted to be able to say it in Hebrew. That's all.
I've been pronouncing it wrong all these because I learned Hebrew they wanted to do a live stage presentation of Family Affair in Israel. I said, well, okay. And so I learned it phonetically, but then I was always saying, Hamishpacha Shekazot, Odlogalo. But of course, that was like years ago. I said it much better then and sang it better.
Mishpacha.
How's that?
So, Kathy, when you're not writing new books and all that kind of stuff, I know you got a new movie out, Yellow Bird, and another one coming out real soon. You want to tell us about that?
Well, I was really happy to do Yellow Bird, and it has won 4 Best Feature Film Awards from 4 prestigious film festivals, in Santa Monica and Singapore, Milan, Mobig in Buffalo, New York. And I'm making a special appearance at the Orinda Theater in Orinda, California. It's a beautiful historic theater. And we're going to show Yellow Bird, and I'm going to do a Q&A and a panel and a meet and greet afterwards. When it came out, the producer was a little surprised. Amazon Prime picked it, boom, right up. And then that was followed by Tubi and Monitu. I hadn't heard of that. And so people can watch it now on Amazon Prime. You just go to amazonprime.com and then put in the little search box, Yellow Bird, and it pops right up, flies right out.
Flies right up?
Flies right out, and you can click on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other big projects coming up?
So I finished Old Man Jackson, and that will make its debut June 1st in Houston, Texas. That's where we shot it. I play Mrs. Jackson. Butch Patrick is in it.
Oh, that's awesome. Now,
there is a new network coming out called Nost, N-O-S-T, which is short for nostalgia. And I'm going to do a 28 episode little series for them like TCM. And so I'll do the intros and the outros of all classic movies. This is a great network because most of them, like MeTV and Roku and Cozy and all those, they'll license the TV shows and the movies, but they don't do any original programming. So what's special about Nost is that, like, here's an original series. We have another series that they want to do, which I really love, this other series, reality series, whereas the other ones didn't. And I hosted a marathon for them last year. Patty Duke show. I was on Patty Duke show. She was a friend of mine, wrote the foreword. Well, she wrote the little foreword to Surviving Cissy.
Sure. Yeah, you played her friend on that show, right?
Right. Yeah.
You've done so much. It's so crazy. We didn't have time there. We scratched a bunch of stuff, but there's so much Kathy Garver. That's why everyone should get her book, Surviving Cissy, My Family Affair of Life in Hollywood. There's a bunch of other books too. Family Affair Cookbook, the Scrapbook. What we got? Holiday recipes for a family affair. There's I feel like I missed one. The Family Affair Cookbook. Ex-Child Stars. But I love that book. That book's great. It kind of dives into the where are they now, or what happened to pretty much everyone. That's great. So I love all your projects, everything you do. I'll put links to all of it. So much Kathy Garver awaits everyone. So I'm so excited for everyone. Kathy, thank you so much for hanging. Oh, the website and where your socials are.
So people can go to my website, which is kathygarver.com. Very inventive, KATHYGARVER.com. And then my IG, my Instagram is at KGCissy. And Facebook is Kathy Garver. Also very inventive. There's the Kathy Garver personal page and then the Kathy Garver fan page. And then I also have a Kathy Garver group. So I don't do TikTok because Chinese will steal all my stuff. So I don't do TikTok, but I do the others.
All right.
Oh yeah. And you make me laugh, Jeff. If you go to my website, you can see my newsletter. And then that shows where I'm going to be all the time at Comic-Con's coming up and different appearances and all that.
We'll have to get you to Motor City Comic-Con.
Yes. I did that maybe 10 years ago. I'd love to do that again.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
We'll walk the parade route again together.
Not afraid. I'll just sit down and be warm. I'll give you 10%. Set me up. And I'll get Patrick.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. How amazing was Kathy Garver? I had so much fun talking with her. Diving into Family Affair, 10 Commandments, Firestar. You got to check out her book, Surviving Cissy, My Family Affair of Life in Hollywood. So many stories. You're going to love it. You will love it. I promise. There's a link in the show notes, so you can hop on over and get that. Tons of great Kathy Garver Family Affair stuff awaits you on her website. Check it out. You will not regret it. Also, don't forget to listen to Lem, the Orphan Reindeer. Make that a priority. Also in the show notes. Well, with the interview over, that can only mean one thing. The episode has come to an end. I can't believe it either. Episode 235 is over. One more huge thank you to my guest, Kathy Garver. And of course, huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. I can't thank you enough. It means the world to me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.